Welcome to the Life First Accounting Firm podcast for accountants who love their work but love their lives outside of work even more. I'm your host, Erica Goody, the 15-hour accountant. I built my own mostly solo accounting firm because I wanted balance, health, and more time with my family. In season 1 of this podcast, we're sharing real starting stories from other accountants who chose to do the same, launch their own firms in a quest for more life and freedom. So pull up a chair, settle in, and listen in to the do's, the don'ts, and the would you do it agains. Welcome to Starting Stories. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined with Savannah Reynolds, and I am so excited you're here, Savannah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes. So right before we hit record, I was telling you how I had a million questions for you because we haven't talked in a while. And I was like on the edge of my seat to hit record so I could ask you all the questions. So I get to right now because we had met, you just reminded me, about a year and a half ago. And through, I don't know how we first got connected, LinkedIn, I don't know, the internet connected
LinkedIn.
us.
Yeah, I think
And
it was your ebook.
oh, okay. Yes. The
Yeah.
15-hour accountant. It caught some eyes because everybody
Just
assumed the 15-hour accountant was 15-hour days. And I was like, no, that's just per week. It's fine. But yeah, we had connected that. We met over Zoom and you were in a place, I'm trying to remember, so correct me however I'm wrong. I think you were in a place you were working at corporate, maybe in a controller role.
Mhm.
I think you were pregnant.
Very newly pregnant, yes. With
Okay.
my
Okay.
third.
And you were
Mhm.
just thinking about options for your career future. Can you tell us, tell us a little bit about, where you were 2 years ago or maybe where your career was before. I don't want to ruin the ending, but before you
Yes.
started a firm.
Yes. So, yes, I originally learned about you on LinkedIn. I downloaded your ebook and just like ferociously read it. And um, I think for so many of us in the industry, it just felt so opposite of the life that I was living at the time. So, like you said, I was in a corporate controller role at a deep tech venture capital funded startup. Um, and was quite honestly pretty miserable at the time, and had considered making that pivot and leaving corporate America honestly in the 2022-23 timeframe. I at that point in time was not at that VC startup, but in another role, and I had taken on kind of some side consulting gigs, totally word of mouth, like obviously not advertising my services, but honestly from other female CPAs that I had worked with in the past who had left corporate America, typically tied to the birth of a baby. And they had kind of, reached their capacity client wise. And so to the extent they were having people reach out, they were kind of deferring or sending business my way. So I'd kind of taken on 3 to 4 clients. They were largely still, larger companies, more kind of like hourly consultant roles, not necessarily like recurring monthly bookkeeping or revenue or anything like that. And then basically I had been called by a former CFO that I had worked with several years ago. And, he was a new CFO at this company and was like, I'd love to have you join me as a controller. Flashed a really nice sign-on bonus and salary. And, that typically was how I made my moves in the past, was kind of just, following what seemed like the next rung on the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of followed him into that role. And I kind of consider it like the cherry on top of my corporate career, in that it, um, you know, turned out to be a very demanding role, like as much or more so as my old school PwC days, and really just was a lot, especially with 2 kiddos at the time, and then eventually another on the way. So, yeah, I think that um, not to look back through like rose-colored glasses, but I think it was a good move in that it really kind of was that final thing that like pushed me to to make this move and kind of go out on my own.
Okay, but so let me understand like the big broad stroke. Like you're at a role before this controllership role, you're at a
Mhm.
role, but you also have like side clients from other CPA women who had babies, left the corporate
Yeah.
environment because this is not an uncommon
Right.
occurrence. We want, I love these articles that are like, why are women leaving upper management? I'm like, what? Really? So anyways, sorry, sidetrack. So other CPA women, babies, they started up their own consulting or
Mhm.
CPA practices. They
Yeah.
were over capacity. Not
Yeah.
over, they just were at capacity, and then they had connected with you and given you a few here and there clients. So you are in corporate with a few here and there side
Yeah.
clients. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and then basically, so that was, like I said, 2022, 23. When I walked into this new corporate controller role, I actually like disengaged from those clients.
Okay.
Was
Sure.
like, okay, this is not a step I'm going to take right now. Um, figured that this new role was going to be quite a bit of a learning curve and pretty demanding, as it very much was. And so, yeah, kind of stepped away entirely from thinking that that was a path. Yeah.
Okay. So then you did this controllership role. How long were you in that role?
So I ended up being in that role for about a year and a half. Funny enough, the CFO that recruited me to that role, he had started only a couple months prior to me, and ultimately within about 4 to 6 months of me being there, he actually left the company abruptly. Um, and so I felt a little bit duped in that regard. Like, oh,
I
okay.
have had that same exact thing happen to me. I know how that feels.
Yeah,
And
and
then
like
you don't pick your boss.
funny enough, my sign-on bonus had a 1-year clawback. He, of course, his did not. So, like, he walks away scot-free,
Sure.
and I've been in this new role for about 6 months. I pretty much immediately realized, like, okay, this might have been a mistake. But hello, I'm an accountant. There's no way I'm going to pay a sign-on
Mhm.
bonus back to leave this job. I'm basically like, I can tough it out for a year. It's not
Mhm.
that long. At this point, I'm already like 6 months into it. So I'm like, no way am I leaving and paying back this sign-on bonus. And so kind of just at that point had the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to tough it out for a year, then we'll move on to something else. And I think around that time, like my husband and I had been toying with the idea of expanding our family again. And ultimately, that kind of became a really easy transition in that, I got pregnant, ultimately, had my baby around the 14, 15-month mark of being there. So, there was really no sense in like leaving that role at 12 months when I could work a couple months longer. And they actually had wonderful maternity benefits, the best I'd actually had, despite being a
Mhm.
startup. And so kind of, took that leave and worked in the background to, set up an LLC and set up a website and um, kind of start putting some fillers out there.
Yeah. How was that being on maternity leave and juggling like setting up an LLC is not that hard,
Yeah.
but you're also on lack of sleep and you have 3 kids. Like
Yeah.
how was that? Was that easy for you? Was that a thing? I don't know. Tell me what that 3-month or whatever the parental leave was like.
Yeah, I think my husband would say that I didn't really take maternity leave because, in addition to that, I actually paid for some coaching during that process as
Okay.
well from somebody else that's in the space. And so, I'm kind of working in the background on like QBO certification, zero,
Yeah.
like all the little certifications, doing all of the business setup, web setup, kind of defining what my service offering was going to be. So, yeah, I basically worked during maternity leave.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it felt different um,
Sure.
because, it felt like it was something that I was doing for me.
I mean, if we can't take this small story and step back and look at women and being like, Women are so cool. Like women will just be like, here's what I needed to do. I'm going to have a baby. I'll take care of that. In one arm, I will hold the newborn. And in the second arm, I will register for an LLC, get a QBO certification and take some coaching. Like, oh
Exactly.
my gosh.
Exactly. I literally remember like playing, kind of trying to juggle the schedule and like timing these coaching calls with
Yeah.
nap times. And
Yeah.
yeah, you just make it work.
Okay. So did you get clients during that time frame or are you just in like setup mode?
Um, I was I was really only in setup mode during that time. So this is like January to um April of this past year, so 2025.
Okay.
I was really hesitant outside of like immediate friends and family connections to really put the word out there.
Hmm.
Obviously had not communicated to the company that I was leaving that I was doing that. And so yeah, I really was kind of just more doing things in the background. Ultimately, I did end up getting my first client towards the very tail end of my maternity leave. And, that was entirely referral, someone in my existing network. And so that's kind of how that started. And I should say that I still, at this point, I am still straddling corporate America and solo firm ownership. So when I informed that company I was not returning, they tried to talk me into a part-time role. We had majorly scaled back on childcare, and I was like, I can't even, like, commit 2 to
Hmm.
3 days a week to you anymore, but ultimately, I did agree to stay on as kind of a contractor, so 1099 contractor with them, to try to bridge the gap, in kind of backfilling my position. Here we are, like, what, 8 months later, and I'm still doing that a little bit, and I think that that's, like, probably good and bad. It's been nice from the standpoint of, like, that's some cash flow, that's, like,
Hmm.
runway, eases a lot of stress of, being like, "Oh, I gotta go get clients, maybe accept clients that aren't a good fit," that sort of thing, but I also will acknowledge that on the other hand, like, that eventually I think probably becomes a little bit of a roadblock or a stumbling block,
Hmm.
in that maybe you don't have as much pressure to go out and build the business, and kind of still being in between those 2 worlds a little bit.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
How many hours per week did you commit anything to them on an hours per week basis when you went 1099?
Yeah, so, we basically agreed that I would kind of average 8 hours a week, so, like, 1 day. I couldn't commit to, like, that being every Tuesday, like,
Yeah.
my husband's schedule was variable at the time. Again, we were kinda going into the summer where we'd really pulled out of full-time daycare. We were gonna have the hodgepodge of, like, summer camps that last for,
Mhm.
like, 3 days or 3 hours, and you're like, "Do I even leave the parking lot, or do I just stay here? Like, what is
Yep.
this?" You know?
Do I have time to make
Yeah.
it to Target and get back here? Mhm, I
Yeah,
get
and,
it.
like, that was intentional, like, I really wanted to, like, soak up all the time last summer that I
Mhm.
could with my kiddos. I think another huge, like, reason that I started my firm last year is my oldest turned 5, and so I feel like I kind of looked up and was like, "Oh my goodness, like, the baby years are gone, like, we're gonna start school," you
Yeah.
know? And realized that I found myself there kind of passively. Like I never really thought like, oh, I would continue to work like a corporate controller demanding role while my babies were babies. And I just kind of passively made the choice to go back after maternity leave 1 and passively made the choice to go back after maternity leave 2. And so kind of looked up his birthday's in May. So end of my leave, his 5th birthday, kind of all of that coincided. And yeah, I just kinda realized, like, "Oh my goodness, my oldest is turning 5," you know?
Yeah.
Also, I have 2 other little ones, and it's kind of like now or never,
Mhm.
to kind of really, like, soak up as much of this, like, intentional time when they're little that I can.
I would guess that you could always go be a corporate controller, like, in
Right,
your career, but you can't
right.
always make those kids be 1, 3, and 5, right? Like,
Yeah,
you can't make that
exactly.
happen again.
Exactly. Yeah,
So so you started up this firm, you're 8 hours, loosely committing 8 hours
yeah.
to this is not your first client. Like now your former employer is kind of like a second client
Right.
also.
Yes.
What kind of firm is it? Are you a tax firm, bookkeeping, fractional CFO? What are you doing in your services?
Yeah. So, generally would consider myself a CAS firm. I know that's like the hot, you know, acronym or whatever out there, but initially started off kind of thinking like general outsourced accounting. For smaller clients, maybe that's cash basis bookkeeping. For, larger clients, maybe that is, accrual financials.
Mhm.
And also, though, with some of that advisory layered in. So, really enjoying kind of the cash flow forecasting side of things, P&L forecasting, scenario modeling around hiring or CapEx investments and kind of different
Mhm.
things like that. And so, my first client is a fractional CFO client, service based business, couple $1 million of top line revenue. And that is kind of like the sweet spot, I feel like, for me, or
Mhm.
what I've learned over the past 8 months. Of course, along the way, I initially started out saying, I don't think I'm going to offer tax services. I did have a stint at a small regional tax firm a long time ago. But initially just thought, I'll stay kind of more true CAS. And along the way, I slipped on that a little bit.
Yep. Yep. You
As
get
we
sucked
do.
in.
Um, and so, that fractional CFO client, they were engaged with a more traditional tax CPA firm. And I was like, okay, that actually works great. Like, I will liaison with them. I'll really kind
Mhm.
of like take the load off your plate. I'll give them every schedule that they need and kind of support the tax return. And honestly, it was such a painful experience. Like, even CPA to CPA, like, I feel like I expected there to be a level of like street cred there,
Yeah.
as far as, like, we speak the same language, like, we are
Yep.
the same person, and, like, even me being like, "Hey, guys, like, is there a draft return I can review? Like, what's happening?" Just was a pretty painful process, and so ultimately, they were really unsatisfied with the level of service they were receiving,
The
to a
client was.
medium-sized. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, they are probably very much still kinda small potatoes to a
Mhm.
medium-sized traditional firm, and so, just wasn't receiving the level of customer service that they wanted, and so, of course, the ask is, "Well, we're engaging you on a monthly basis, like, couldn't you just do
Can't you
this?"
just do it? Yes, I've heard this before.
And I will say for them, like, I'm very cautious, like, to not take on, like, this super complicated tax return that I don't feel comfortable with. Like, they are a service-based husband-wife 50/50 partnership. Like, it was the most simple 1065 I've nearly ever seen.
Mhm.
Very limited fixed assets or really anything like that. And so felt very comfortable with the return. And so I am kind of a one-stop shop for them at this point, and along the way have taken on some additional tax engagements. And I think, at the 8-month mark, am learning like, okay, maybe I should have stuck to my guns, like, on some things. Um, so we'll
Well,
see.
what
Like,
is there anything specific that, you know, if you're into it 8 months now and you're like,
yeah.
I wish I hadn't X." Don't call out any clients, but, like, is there something like a theme of something that you're like, "Ooh, I said I wasn't gonna do this, and I did it, and I regret that."
Yeah. Well, I think the largest thing that I said that I will probably try to really work back to over the next year is doing any form of tax for someone that I'm not actively engaged with on a monthly basis.
Got it.
Like,
Like
initially, I was like, "No tax," and then I was like, "Okay, tax only if you're engaging with me monthly," and then somewhere along the way, also picked up a few just, like, tax only.
like
Um,
1040s or
yeah,
business stuff.
primarily, yeah, 1040 Schedule C, so simple, but
Yeah.
still at the end of the day, like, you're spending time, like,
Mhm.
cleaning up someone's QuickBooks. That's,
Mhm.
I'm very much, like, not an hourly biller, flat fee. And so it's like I'm taking time to clean up your books to a certain extent to feel
Mhm.
comfortable about the tax return that I'm preparing. And ultimately, that's, not a part of the engagement. And so just
Right.
kind of a drain on the fees that I'm charging.
Yeah, which I guess you could solve that in two ways. No, I'm not going to
Yeah.
do it. Or if I'm going to do it,
Yes.
here's the price for that. Like,
Yes.
if you engage with me monthly, I might have this price for a
Right.
tax return. If you don't engage with me like monthly, it might be 5 times the cost,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
I don't want to do that. And if I have to do it, you better pay me really good.
Right.
And that's their choice then, right?
Hmm. Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
8 months in, how many monthly clients do you have?
so monthly at this point, I have 3 outside of the former employer that I'm still
Okay.
supporting. So I kind of see that as like 2 different worlds, and that's honestly the way it feels very disjointed to me, like it's their computer and my computer, like
Mm-hmm.
big company accounting, small business, you know what I mean? It very much feels like kind of splitting still between 2 different worlds, and so I will say in that I will be very transparent in that I think the on-ramp has been a lot slower than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Just being completely transparent, like, I think you hear a lot of, "Oh, there's an abundance of work out there," you know, and there is, but at the same time, I have been very resistant to going out and, like, charging a couple $100 a month to do someone's bookkeeping, like, that's
Mm-hmm.
just not the firm that I wanna build, like, I very
Yeah,
much would love to emulate you and have the much smaller list of clients that are at a higher service tier that I'm providing a more holistic level of service to, and so, I think I've had a lot of conversations, you know, over the past 8 months that ultimately have probably come down to price, which, you know, is unfortunate. Like,
mm-hmm.
you can find a cheaper option.
Yeah,
But at the same time, like, I know that my goal is not to have the 50 clients paying $350 a month. Like, that's not where I wanna be.
that's okay.
Um, yeah.
And it's okay for people who do want to be there. Like, there's
Yes.
not a wrong answer. There's just a
Absolutely.
different business model.
Exactly. Exactly.
So do you mind me asking, of the not former employer, of like the 3 clients that you went out on your own, what is like an average monthly retainer rate or fixed rate that you're
Yeah.
looking to get from clients?
Oh, I pulled all the numbers ahead of this call, so you are completely transparent. I am more than
Thank
happy
you.
being
Oh, you're
transparent.
so amazing.
So, so yeah, last year from May through December of 2025, ultimately I ended the year with about $35,000 of revenue from my um recurring clients only, like what I would
Okay.
consider like my book of business. And then nearly $50,000 in the former employer kind of
Okay.
contract. So, you know, we're talking like a 60-40 split basically there. But basically around like $84,000 of kind of self-employment income basically for
How many
2020.
hours would you say in those first few months were you working?
Yeah, so I think initially last summer, not as much. I think that's another thing that I need to be more intentional about, kind of, you know, as we get close to kind of the 1 year mark and kind of moving forward, is that I have worked a lot more maybe than what I intended initially. And I think one thing I'm very much still learning is how it can all kind of run together. Like when you work
Hmm.
from a home office, like it's
Yeah.
so just easy to respond to an email at night when you have your kids, you know? And so it was less last summer, you know, because we had far less childcare. And then kind of moving into the fall, my boys went back to preschool. I ended up, you know, getting some help here at home with my daughter. And so I say that like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are kind of my work days because I want
Hmm.
to exercise some flexibility on Monday, Friday. Transparently, I do end up working a little bit Mondays and Fridays. My husband would also say probably weekends and nights. So yeah, I've definitely, you know,
Do you
got to
think
kind of rein that in.
do you think that's more like, I think everybody listening to this will know what I mean when I say this. Do you think that's more of a habit that we've
Yes.
learned that you have to break, or is that like client need?
That is a habit. That, I think, has been the most surprising thing. I had largely been remote since 2020. So it's not, working from home is normal for me. But to your point, like after a decade, it is so hard to unwire the
Mhm.
like Monday through Friday work week um kind of mentality of like, this is a business day, these are business hours, I need to be responsive. Like that
Mhm.
is yeah. I think that has been honestly like one of the most surprising things is how hard it is to like unwire some of those things and like how much of a mental shift it is when you
Yeah.
move from like full-time corporate to kind of solopreneur.
Yeah. Like, you have the choice. You used to not have the choice,
Exactly.
and that's something to unwind.
Yeah.
My oldest right now is learning to drive, which when she went to kindergarten, like your oldest, and you were like, I was in your shoes. Like, when she went to
Yeah.
kindergarten is when I left corporate,
Yeah.
and now she's learning to drive.
Oh.
Okay, so well, I won't cry on screen, it's fine. But what we talk about, so we're, like, driving and, you know this, when you're, like, on, like, like, not an interstate, but a highway that's going 60 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you come into a town, and the speed limit is suddenly 35. And you have to go from going 60 miles an hour
Yeah.
to 35. And like, one, you have to consciously do that. And two, it's really hard to do because you're used to
Yeah.
going 60 miles an hour and that was the speed you were going. And then you go 30 and you're like, I'm going so slow. And I
Yeah.
think coming out of corporate feels the same way. Like, we are bred to work at a
Yeah.
certain pace with somebody watching over us, and we know somebody's watching over us.
Yeah.
And it's hard to un unbreak like, break that habit and unwind that
Yeah.
that training, really.
It really is. And I mean, I have a very similar background to you where it's like, um, you know, big four right out of the gate, just like go, 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 go. I was pretty terrible at boundaries and like honoring nights and weekends when I was in corporate as well. I feel like the boundaries existed a little bit more in that maybe people outside of the accounting and finance organization were working more typical business hours. And so maybe that was, the volume of the emails or whatever that you would get. But, um, I was always bad to, feel this need or sense of urgency to respond to a request or an
Mhm.
email.
Yeah. Ugh, okay, I have to ask about these 3 clients, that you got on your own. What was the source of all those? Were they all referrals like that first client, or where did they arise from?
They have all been referrals. Yes. Yeah.
Any
So,
any particular, like, type of source of your networking? Like, is it old professional network? Is it, personal network?
yeah, it's a little bit of a mix. So, the first client, honestly, is proximity in that it is someone in my neighborhood. So, a couple that had acquired a small business through an SBA. Um, and so, that was proximity alone. And then otherwise, it's kind of been a mix. Funny enough, my husband's network. So, a few clients that I have, I've kind of leaned, I feel like, in the mental health or like private practice kind of
Mhm.
side of things. My husband is a nurse practitioner. And so a couple of these, were like former like grad school friends of his who have started, private practices and that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, it's been a mix of like my professional network, proximity, and then also his network.
That's great. Can
Yeah.
I ask, like, a nitty-gritty question about the
Yeah.
neighbors that you were like, "It's proximity, they're the neighbors," but,
Yes.
like, what was the conversation that went from, like, "We're just neighbors" to, "Do you need a fractional CFO?" Like, is this like a honestly, is this like a playground conversation? Was this like, something happened and people think that these conversations don't happen, so I'm curious, like, what
Yeah.
was it in your case?
Yeah. So I think that they knew from like neighborhood playground conversations that I
Mhm.
was kind of leaving corporate America and going on my own. The husband in this particular example, like, has an investment banking background, so, like, he's familiar enough with, like, me and my line of work and kind of what that looks like, and so they had acquired a small business. Initially, again, they had used another firm in town, more traditional accounting firm, and specifically kind of their outsourced accounting side
Mhm.
of things, and, you know, I previously also worked at an outsourced accounting firm after leaving Big Four, and so I very much understand, like, the traditional model at those more traditional firms where it's, you are sold, hours of a few different people's time, various experience levels. There's never really a true partner, or someone in kind of your corner, necessarily that you feel like kinda has your back or that you can bounce things off of, and so they'd used an outsourced accounting firm for about 6 months. Again, didn't like the customer service and kind of the responsiveness they were getting. So they had ended that engagement and had actually tried to like DIY things for like 4 to 5
Okay.
months.
Okay.
And, like, we're talking, like, he's still kind of doing deals over here, like, not just operating this business, but kinda, like, still in the IB world. The wife is, a VP at a local company, like, demanding role also. So, you can imagine, like, what that means, like, as far as what happens to, like,
So you had
the
like
book.
5 months of cleanup.
Basically, yeah. And so anyways, I think that they realized that they had probably kind of bitten off more than they could chew, and so it was honestly just a text message one day
Mhm.
that was like, "Hey, you looking for new clients?
Ugh.
Like, can we chat about this?" And basically started working with them, in kind of May of last year. So, again, good and bad when it comes to boundaries and things there. They It was a really nice test case, I feel like, and someone that I knew that I could kind of um experiment with like, okay, what's my pricing or what are my different service offerings? And also very much like a learning curve in that I typically do ask for people's books or for QBO access kind of during the proposal and scoping process, but very much that learning lesson of, um, if you are doing cleanup work, like in this particular case, like it took me much longer than I had anticipated because you kind of get into the weeds and
Yeah.
the more you get in there, the more you find. And so, yeah, but really good experience overall, I think. And you're always super appreciative, I feel like, to that first client that takes a bet on you.
Yeah, and I think it's a great reminder that, like, your first anything is an experiment and you're figuring
Yeah.
it out, and that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. That doesn't
Right.
mean you weren't smart enough. Like, we're all figuring it out, and we all have a unique service offering, despite
Mhm.
what everybody would say, "Here are your 3 tiers." Like, no, we all have
Right.
our own experience and our own knowledge base, and that's gonna change between people, and you just have to figure it out for yourself, and that's okay, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
how long you took to work for 3 clients in the past year is gonna be different on how long it takes for those same 3 clients next year,
Yeah.
because everything takes 3 times as long when you're learning,
Right.
and it's gonna take a fraction of the time on the next client because you've taken the time to figure it out, and
Yeah.
that's okay too.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and right now is obviously kind of a busier time just given that it's tax season. So like I said, I did take on some tax only work. So I'm doing like probably around 12 tax returns right now and hoping to primarily do that all prior to April 15th. I think there's going to be one that we'll have to extend due to circumstances, getting a K1 that we're probably not going to
Sure.
have by then, but um yeah, so busier time right now, but definitely moving past tax season and kind of to that 1 year mark, already feeling the need to kind of like back up and kind of reevaluate like, okay, a year ago when I first set out to do this, like who is it that I said I wanted to serve?
Mhm.
Like, does that still work? Does that still make sense? And like what was I saying that I was gonna provide for them? and probably a little bit of backtracking.
Sure. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. You learn something and you figure it out and you
Right.
refine. And it's
Yeah.
a cycle that you will always be on. You'll always be refining, I think.
Right.
We'll always be refining.
Right.
How has it been with now 3 kids, um, balancing that with work? Do you ever wonder, dream about going back to a W-2 job? Do you think this will work for you? What's your feeling on the home front?
Yeah. I am still very much hopeful at this point. I do not see myself reentering a W-2 position, um, at least for a while. Like, I hope to say never, but I'm not gonna say never say never, like, the right opportunity, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
something wouldn't, like, spark my interest, but, just, that, like, mental lift of, like, being able to be at every school party that I wanna be at and, like, not even have to think about it. Like, there's no one
Mhm.
to ask, like, there's not even really a calendar to block, like, I can just do it, you know? And so I think that has meant so much to me over the past year. I've also, I have some help here at the house, but I've been able to spend more time with my baby than I did with my 2 older ones, and that has just been invaluable. Just so incredibly thankful for that over the past year, and I try not to think about it when it comes to my boys because it makes me a little bit sad that I did not
Mhm.
necessarily have that with them, that they were like full-time daycare kiddos, from 4 months on, basically,
Yep.
right after
Yep.
leave. And so, but yeah, I feel like this past year with my baby has been very redemptive in that regard, in that it's been really wonderful to spend that time with her. And, the model that I have now of like having kind of a mother's helper here to help me with her and like help with afternoon pickups with my boys and is just like ideal. Like, it's what I wish everyone could have, and what I
Mhm.
wish I could have had 5 years ago. So, I think if anything, if, I didn't feel like my business was growing, and like I said transparently, like I think the on ramp has been slower than I would have expected. Like, I think if anything, I would consider more true like contractor roles. Like, there are obviously a million, placement firms, or kind of those fractional models, like I was saying before, that, have sent me, hey, I have this temp job or maternity leave backfill or whatever. So at this point, I feel like there's some other options before I would consider, like, walking
Mhm.
back into a full-time W-2.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
I will give you a little foreshadowing and warning you when that youngest has been with you all the time, you cannot peel them off your leg at
Oh,
kindergarten.
I mean, we experience that even when it comes to, like, the YMCA childcare or,
Yes. Yes.
like, nursery at church. Like, yes, the attachment is there for
Yeah.
sure.
I had a full-time daycare oldest kid who was like, "Bus is here," kindergarten, "Bus is here, bye, mom." And I was like, "Okay." And then I had
Yeah.
a at home with mom since he was a baby, and that one
Yes.
couldn't peel off, for the first day of school, so
Exactly. Yeah, it is wild how much of a difference that makes for sure.
yes. Any parting advice, wisdom, suggestions for anybody who might be in corporate and feeling, like they're stuck or maybe they're pregnant and they don't know what post-pregnancy looks like from a career standpoint? Any advice?
Yeah. Um, if anything, I think, consider making that leap sooner. Like,
Mhm.
looking back, I wish that this was something that I would have even known was possible when I was, like, 25, you know? And that's why I'm so grateful to people like you and other people in the space who have been really transparent about their experience and, like, what they're building because, um, you know, call it small-minded or whatever, but I just really, like, believed everything that I was kind of told from grad school on of, like, this is the path. Like, you do Big
Mhm.
4, you pass your CPA, you eventually become controller somewhere, you become CFO, like, that is success, you know?
Yep.
And I just, like, kind of made a beeline to follow those steps. And so I think just being able to challenge the more traditional model. And, I think a lot of things have changed. Like, I think back now to my female corporate controller that I worked for, like, pre-COVID, who, like, 5 days a week in office, 2 kids. Like, I never really had that experience. Like I said, from 2020 on, since I'd had my first, I'd always been remote at least.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of just like thinking back to how things have changed with like people that have come before you, like obviously COVID kind of really changed the game as far as remote work is concerned. But, people like you kind of sharing what is possible, I think has just been invaluable. And so, so thankful for you and your willingness to share. I think you totally have that attitude of like a rising tide, raises all boats, and that you're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to like keep this to yourself. And just so respect that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I want everybody to know, hence the podcast, hence the blasting it on
Yes.
LinkedIn. To your point, when you're in corporate, when you're in public, shocking, nobody tells you there's another way.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I was same exact thing that you just described. And it took me completely leaving the workforce and building
Yeah.
it from scratch to be like, wait, you can do this?
Yeah.
And I want people to know sooner than later. I just want people to know their options. It doesn't mean you have to start a firm. It might not be for you, but it might be. And
Right.
that's an option for you.
Yeah.
Well, Savannah, thank you so much for being here, for being so transparent, for sharing your story and encouragement to others who might be in that same position. I just appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, it's Erica again. Thanks for joining us today. If you want more stuff like this, subscribe to the 15-Hour Accountant newsletter. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. Special thanks to everyone who helped bring this podcast to life. This podcast is produced and edited by the 15-Hour Accountant. All design work is by Lou Valdivieso. The music you're hearing right now in the background is called Destination Freedom by Avocado Junkie. Until next time, work well, live well.